WrestleRoni, episode 100. 100 episodes. I couldn't think of a better guest than what we have today. Not only a wrestling legend, but now a local hero. Everybody welcome the Cuban Assassin. How we doing, my man?
I'm doing all right. Hope everybody's doing well out there.
We are now. We got Cuban Assassin with us. We're doing great. A lot of folks
Awesome.
saw it on the channel. A lot of folks have seen it on the news. I'll let you tell the story. What can you tell the audience about 1 week from today? What happened in your life, sir?
Well, when I was doing my regular job, which is with the West Virginia Courtesy Patrol, which is a program that's funded through the state of West Virginia, state of tourism, and handled through the Department of Highways. And what we do basically is it's a courtesy patrol an area, different routes and four lanes and interstates in the state of West Virginia. And what we do is we try to offer assistance to help people, like give them a gallon of gas, change their tire if they don't know how to do it, give them a jump, or get them the necessary personnel there if they need any personnel. It's basically to make sure that people are safe when they're outside and broke down, inside the state of West Virginia. The primary function is people's safety. So we try to figure out what we can do to get them off the road. We help what we can somewhat with the vehicle, but it's actually them that's really a concern. Well, about a week ago, last week, I was just naturally patrolling. Was anything really going on? It was a real foggy night, real foggy day, especially at night because I worked the overnights between 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. is my shift. And I cover from US Route 19, mile marker 2, which is the Bradley, Mount Hope exit, all the way up to mile marker 35, which is Mount Nebo, which in this case, there was no driver on the Summersville side of the truck. So when there's no driver on that, I have to cover all the way up to Interstate 79 and back. So nothing really going on. Just, foggy day, trying to take it slow and easy. And once I got to the Never Gorge Bridge and I got about halfway across the Never Gorge Bridge in the southbound lane, I see flashers through the fog flashing on. So I turned my top bar light on, and unbeknownst to me, because I can't see anything in the fog, there was somebody actually walking towards the bridge. But when they saw my top bar light, they apparently jumped over the guardrail at the beginning of the part of the bridge there, where I couldn't see them. I went and pulled right behind the vehicle because it was off the bridge. It wasn't on the bridge. And what happened is, as I got out, I was looking around the vehicle. Of course, we had to take down the registration, which was a gentleman from North Carolina. I was walking around checking the vehicle, see if there's anything different or noticeable about the vehicle like we're supposed to. Looked inside the vehicle through the windshield and saw that the key was in ignition, that the door was unlocked. And automatically I knew these two things wasn't good. This is usually a tall tale sign of someone who jumped off the bridge to commit suicide. So immediately I walked back to my truck and I was debating, should I put my cones out first or call 911 first? I heard something scuffling off to my right side, which is where the bridge is at this point. The left side of me is where the street light is and coming into Fayetteville. And when I turned over to the right, I see this silhouette of kind of a gray, shadow person that had jumped over the guardrail and was starting to run down the bridge. I hollered at them, and they turned around. I tried to shine my flashlight in the eyes to disorient them as I was running to them. The guy stopped, leaned over the bridge, looked a couple of times, went back and started running again. I'm sitting there hollering at him, stop, hey, stop. And then he looked back. I shined the lights again, trying to get in his eyes. And this whole moment, he just looks like a grayish shadow-like person to me in the fog. While we're running in the fog on the bridge, we're running into oncoming traffic because we're in the southbound lane. So we're running with traffic coming towards us. And it's very hard for them to see either one of us on the bridge. And then I see him look over the bridge again. I holler at him. He gets down, starts running. At that time, a big semi-truck come flying by. Now, the speed limit is 65 miles per hour there. But people are probably doing, 70, and some people be doing almost 80. And then when you get across the bridge, it drops dramatically from 65 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a speed trap in a way because it drops so dramatically.
Right.
Um, and but when that semi truck came by, the gust of wind just kind of blew me and kind of I went up against the cement barrier of the bridge on my left side of my left shoulder. And that's when common sense kind of set in, and I was like, man, I'm out here by myself chasing this guy's trying to commit suicide. If I grab a hold of him, there's a big chance, really big chance, that we're both going to go over the bridge.
Yeah.
So I stopped, I turned around, and I ran back to my truck, and I called 911. And the Fayette County deputy sheriffs got there within 2 minutes. They were really quick. So they got to the bridge area up there, and then they pulled the individual off the bridge, and they subdued him. But it took 5 deputies to be able to do that. And the guy was a pretty tall guy. And but we ended up saving his life. And just so everybody knows, because they don't really talk about jumpers on the news or anything, they don't like that to be talked about because it puts a bad image on the New Gorge Bridge.
Right.
And we have Bridge Day every year, and Bridge Day is one of the biggest tourism moneymakers that they have in the state of West Virginia. So it's kind of like that movie Jaws, where the sheriff is trying to close the beach down, and then the mayor and the city council are saying, no, we can't do that. We have a big summer celebration.
Yep.
It's where all this money comes into the town. Same type of situation.
For sure.
Okay. So that, but they don't talk about. They make sure they don't talk about the bridge as much as possible, because it's actually like ranked one of the 5th places in the world to commit suicide.
Wow.
And I've been with the Courtesy Patrol program since 2015, and this was the 39th jumper I had to deal with. The 39th jumper. So that's how many jumpers there was since I've been working with the Courtesy Patrol program since 2015. Normally, I find the vehicles usually on the bridge, sometimes on the edge of the bridge, but mostly in the bridge, and that's where we come across the vehicles, or myself, I should say, because I'm usually the first one on the scene when finding out there's someone had jumped off the bridge. This is the very first one that we're able to save, the very first one.
Congrats.
And yeah, so it's the first time I was ever put in a situation of, what would you do if someone was there in the process of trying to commit suicide? And mind you, it was a foggy night, and hard to see, and trying to chase somebody up the bridge and onto oncoming traffic. It's a very dangerous situation just to be on that bridge alone.
Right.
And because I've never been in that situation before, and I don't think there's really any training that can be provided, even through my experience. It wouldn't be easy to be able to train people on how to handle it. I handled it the best way I thought possible, but then again, I wasn't thinking. I was more or less reacting,
Right.
and based on on the reaction. But I think what really was important is my reaction time to realize I needed to call 911. I can't do it by myself, and the reaction time of the Fayette County deputy sheriff who arrived and be able to save this guy's life.
Right.
So, and what happened is with this guy, they subdued him. They decide that they're going to have to hold him at the Fayette County Sheriff's Office till they get a magistrate to sign an order where he has to go to Bar H, which is Beckley Appalachian Hospital there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Appalachian Regional Hospital. But they so that way the doctor is the only one that can release him, and then they put a hold on his vehicle for only the next of kin to be able to get out from the holding. That way it can't be him. It has to be somebody else.
Good.
Because the only thing we can do at that point is try to help that individual.
Yeah.
Because there's no real law on trying to commit suicide. It's when you actually commit the suicide that you broke the law.
Oh, okay.
And there's no real law against trying to commit. It's just when you do succeed in killing yourself, then you broke the law, which is kind of a ridiculous law.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing they can do for you when you're dead.
Right.
And the whole idea is to try to save lives. And that's what the Courtesy Patrol is about, is trying to make sure people are safe, even those who are trying to do harm to themselves.
Right.
but yeah, I mean, and sometimes we run across, I've run across a couple of domestics that's happened before
Mm-hmm.
while patrol. I mean, these things happen, and people are human beings, and human beings make mistakes all the time,
Yeah.
and and human beings react to, you know, we don't all act the same, but we all don't have the same agenda, like trying to commit suicide. But there are those who do, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And that was the first time I was in that type of situation, so I did not know really how to handle it. But like I said, I think I did the best I could to handle the situation. And when I realized, thanks to the semi truck that came by, and the wind gushed me up against the barricade, the concrete barricade of the bridge, it knocked some common sense to me, and made me realize I need to get help. I can't do this by myself because
Right.
there's a big probability if I grab that guy, then
Mm-hmm.
he's going to pull me over, and then we'll both be going over the bridge, and that won't accomplish anything.
No. Well.
So, but it had a good outcome and good result. We did save the guy's life, and that's the point. And hopefully the guy gets the help that he needs. Anytime people are contemplating suicide, they need to get help. It's the biggest thing. And a lot of people think there is no help because they're already at the thing thinking that's the end of their life. That's why they're already preparing for it. But they have to. There is help. People can contact the suicide prevention hotline.
Mm-hmm.
They can get help. And I advise anybody who has any thoughts at all of suicide, definitely contact the suicide prevention hotline because that way they can get help. Because there's nothing worth that's that bad in life that's worth you killing yourself, no matter what the situation is.
Agreed.
Just I think when you do that, you're not hurting yourself; you're hurting everybody else that you leave behind,
Yeah.
and then you're leaving a lot of unanswered questions that they may have want to know why didn't he get a hold of somebody, why didn't he talk to somebody, he or she, because we have females that done it too.
Right.
There's no age limit on this. It covers all age groups. It covers both male and female. Uh, they do this, quite often. It's just a sad thing to see, and actually come across it and see it in the process of it. That's the first time it ever happened to me, and since 2015, since I was with the Courtesy Patrol, have been with the Courtesy Patrol program.
Uh-huh. Well, and you're exactly right. Think about the folks you live behind. I've never mentioned it on the show, but I lost my mother to suicide just out of nowhere. I talked to her one day. She's watching football. She's gone the next. So yeah, think
Mm-hmm.
about those you're going to leave behind and what you're going to do to them. At the same time, man, there's no greater duty you can do than saving a life. So we got to give you all the respect in the world for that, for what you did. And at the same time, there's no better feeling than the respect of your peers. I was there Saturday. You were honored at PWL. What can you tell the folks about the experience Saturday at PWL, as well as the PWL locker room? I know all the guys look up to you. What can you tell the folks about that?
Well, I mean, I've been around since sliced bread, since it's been invented. So, I mean, I got the respect of my peers in the wrestling industry just from the wrestling alone.
Mm-hmm.
And being a second generation wrestler and following in your father's footsteps with the exact same name and the exact same gimmick that your father created,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it harder on that individual to get respect. But I've earned my respect and paid my dues, and still doing it for 34 years of wrestling professionally.
Hell yeah.
It was a great honor, really, to be recognized by my peers, but it's also kind of odd that I'm, what we call the heel or the villain in wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the heel and the villain that was the one that saved someone's life from committing suicide.
Right.
Uh, although the gentleman that was trying to commit suicide didn't know anything about me being the Cuban assassin, but that's the thing that's kind of an irony about it. But it goes to show that anybody could be the one that saved you and or to help you in this situation. And but it was a true honor from PWL to do that, and I like doing some of the shows PW. I don't like to try to take the spotlight from all the young talents today because it's their time now. My time's kind of come and gone, but I still do pro wrestling because I love it. I can't. It's the favorite. It's the thing I grew up around and the thing I grew up watching.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people don't realize that my dad, we was around my dad, for a few years. Me and my sister, I was born in 1970. My sister Cindy was born in 1971,
Mm-hmm.
and then my dad and mom were separated and divorced in 1980. And my dad had another family.
Okay.
And we didn't really get to hear from my dad much. We only, he would only call maybe twice a year, and he would send birthday money um, and he would send some Christmas money,
Mm-hmm.
to me and my sister. But that was basically it. And because he had another family he had to take care of, so it was left up to my mom to take care of us. But she had gotten remarried, and my stepdad DJ, who's long passed away from COPD. Of course, my stepmother Pat, which was the woman that my dad married and had some children with, um, she had passed away years ago, like around 2000, I think 2002, 2003, somewhere around through there. I have to check back, but she passed away from cancer.
Mm.
And but you know, uh, my stepdad, had to pick up the pace with us, and he was a huge wrestling fan. I'll tell you this story real quick.
Oh,
A lot
have
of people
at it,
don't know
please.
this. Yeah, when my stepdad took us to the local, because he was a huge wrestling fan, and that's what really made me a wrestling fan.
Mm.
Was my stepdad, DJ, Donald J. Dempsey, and and he really did help take care of me and my sister. He really did, and we done things together that a father and son should have done.
Right.
But he took us to the wrestling show, and he has other kids. So he brought one of his other sons, which is Scott, and Scott was a big wrestling fan too. And what was took us to the old Raleigh County Armory, which is now known as the Beckley Convention Center.
Mm.
And the wrestling show that was there was ICW, International Championship Wrestling, which is the Poffos territory,
Neat.
their
Okay.
business.
Uh-huh.
So I got to see Angelo Poffo as the Miser wrestle on that card that night, and got to see Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh yeah, dig it, brother, as ICW World Champion. And we also saw his brother Lipa Lanny Poffo, who was defending the ICW Television Championship that night.
Mm-hmm.
And we're up on the second tier, and we're sitting there watching the show and everything. And then this was in 1982.
Okay.
Fast forward from 1982 to up to 1998, and I'm up for a guy's promotion. The guy's name is Bull Miller. He's since passed away from diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and he ran a wrestling show, and it was a public access local television televised show called IWA Back Alley Brawl, which IWA stands for International Wrestling Alliance.
Okay.
And I thought it was great and significant because my dad had wrestled for the old original IWA in the past, and here I'm wrestling for the IWA then at that time, the present. Um, and in the locker room when I come in, there's Leap and Lanny Poffo sitting down on the couch in the dressing room. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really a locker room, just a small office in the dressing room. So here, 1982, I'm watching Leap and Lanny Poffo, and then here in 1998, I'm sharing the locker room and being on the same card
Mm-hmm.
as Lipalani Poffo. And Lipalani looks at me and he says, "I know your father. I know him well." And that's
Sound
that
like it.
was that was Lipalani, and I was like, "Yeah, your father. I seen him one time. I seen him punch a guy and he knocks him out with one hit." And I said, "I'm going to be that guy's best friend." And and I was like, "Wow, really?" He says, "Your father. I owe him a lot. He taught me a lot. He taught my brother Randy a lot, and we learned a lot of experience with your father." And he's talking about the time they did the tour for Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling
Mm-hmm.
for Emile Dupree when my dad was wrestling up there. And just so everybody knows, I started my wrestling career in 1989, 34 years ago, from last month, from June,
Wow.
for Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling in Emile Dupree's territory.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so he's talking about the Atlantic Grand Prix wrestling territory. So another synchronicity going on here. And then fast forward from 1998 up to 2009, and I'm wrestling for a group called Ultimate Championship Wrestling
Mm-hmm.
in the Maritimes. And we're in Berwick, Nova Scotia, in the old Berwick Arena. It's the last time a wrestling show was put there. And the main event was me and it was me and Wildman Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is the match turned. Some guy come out and jumped me, and then my dad come out to make the save. The referee turned the match, said this match must continue, and now it's a tag team match.
Oh,
Then
okay.
all of a sudden, someone else came out and jumped me and my dad, and then all of a sudden, Lanny Poffo happened to be on that tour. Comes out, he makes the save, and now the referee says this match must continue. It's now a six-man tag, so now it's me, my dad, and Lanny Poffo
Oh,
in wrestling action in the main event. And Lanny gets the win by doing his backflip on brother, while me and my father had the other guys, and it 1, 2, 3. It was the last main event ever held in the old Berwick Arena in Berwick, Nova Scotia. Now they have what's called the Apple Dome there, which is a bigger arena. This is right down the road from where they tore down the Berwick Arena.
okay.
But but it was so it's just kind of weird the synchronicity. As a fan, I got to see Lanny Poffo and at the Raleigh County Armory, now the Beckley Convention Center in Beckley, West Virginia, in 1982. 1998 in Columbus, Ohio. I'm sharing the locker room on the same card with Lanny Poffo for IWA Back Alley Brawl.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden in 2009, I'm tag teaming with Lanny Poffo and Berwick, Nova Scotia, at the Berwick Arena, and for Ultimate Championship Wrestling, UCW, and it was kind of like came full circle,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. I come as a fan, now I'm as a fellow brother in the locker room, and now we're a teammate one time only, and I thought that was like really amazing to go through that full circle. And Lanny was one of the nicest people, and he became a good friend to me, and it was sad to hear of his passing earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And because I learned a lot from him just on that one tour, and he told a lot of wonderful, beautiful stories of my dad, but he also told a lot of good stories about his brother, Randy Macho Man Savage, which he idolized his brother more
Yeah.
than anything. He loved his father, but his brother Randy, he thought was one of the best wrestlers ever, was a genius. I can't disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, at all, because Macho Man Randy Savage was the reincarnation, the reinvention of Gorgeous George.
Okay.
And, his whole thing, like Savage was the same way Gorgeous George was. Gorgeous George believed that, the wrestling match didn't start when the bell rung. It started from your entrance, from the moment you come out. So Gorgeous George was the first guy in pro wrestling to come out to ring entrance music, which was Pomp and Circumstance, the same entrance music that Macho Man Randy Savage used
Mm-hmm.
for his entrance. So start with that entrance and the presentation. Gorgeous George had these nice, colorful robes and would get out and act pressy and do all these things in the ring to get people's attention. Macho Man come out in these robes and capes. Everything was about the presentation first, and you established from the match that you're the heel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you didn't have to second guess. Who the heel was. You already knew.
Yeah.
Gorgeous George is the heel. How dare this guy? And then same thing, Macho Man Randy Savage. Both and Macho Man idolized Gorgeous George, and that was one of the guys he fashioned himself after. That's what Macho Man kind of is. It's Gorgeous George.
Yep.
And he just reinvented Gorgeous George, and but with a louder tone, louder uh, expression, louder presentation. Everything was louder with Savage because he was in top gear. If
Mm-hmm.
he was in a car starting off in first gear, he's already in fifth. He's that's Macho Man. I mean, he
Yeah.
was a crazy wild guy, and he was all for the fans, and he was all for making the best presentation, make yourself stand out, make sure people are paying attention to you. Which is the same philosophy I tell everybody about me being as a Cuban assassin. I'm doing the same character my dad did, but I'm doing it differently. My dad wouldn't holler and scream at the fans like I do. Like I say, shut your stinking mouths, And I would, you got to get them to notice you. You got to have their eyes looking on you. If the eyes aren't looking on you when you're out there, you're doing something wrong.
Yep.
And sometimes you have to cater and play to the fans. Sometimes it's a high spot, what we used to call. Today, American wrestling is more of American lucha style. They've adopted the Mexican and Japanese, art and kind of put the American psychology to it.
Yeah.
So that's why you got so much more action involved in a wrestling match than what you do today. But I'm not trying to disrespect any of these young wrestlers. I mean, wrestling is what it is today, and I encourage them to do what they're doing today. I'm from the past. But
Right.
when I also look at today's professional wrestling, who the top guys are, who the heavyweight champion is, it doesn't matter which company you go to, you start seeing who the top guy is. You're like, wait a minute, you know, how many times you seen Roman Reigns do a back somersault flip, or how many times you see Roman Reigns sitting there trying to do these amazing jumping acrobats with the
Yeah.
lucha style? You don't. Same thing for the guys before him.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see Steve Austin do that? Did you see Hulk Hogan do that? No.
Right.
Did you see Triple H do that? Did you see the Undertaker doing that? Now, granted, the Undertaker would dive over the top rope, but he didn't do no backflips or anything.
Right.
Did you see Bret the Hitman Hart do it?
Right.
Did you see? I mean, even though Eddie Guerrero can do it, but when he became the heavyweight champion, he was doing less of the lucha style, right?
Yeah.
And concentrated more on the interaction with the fans and more the character presentation, because he's a little man in a big man's world,
Mm-hmm.
and but yet he got himself over for being main event status. I mean, he did more before he was the heavyweight champion, and when he became the heavyweight champion, Eddie Guerrero did less.
Yeah.
And because that's the main event spot. That's the guy that's putting butts in seats. That's the guy that's trying to keep the company going, and you're the guy, and you're in the spot that everybody wants.
Right.
Like no disrespect, and but plus Eddie also got him in weight wise. He got himself in the heavyweight position too, weight wise,
Yeah.
and he was freaking like ripped, like the Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
He was ripped. And of course, we all know that steroids had to play in that, but he had to do what he had to do for his presentation.
Right.
You know, and I don't agree with enhancement drugs, but I'm not going to tell anybody not to do them. If they got a plan and agenda, and they want to be successful, that's up to them. I believe that's up to them. It should be up to them if they want to do that. I don't think you should have the federal government saying you can't. I think that's up to you.
Right.
It's not harming nobody but yourself.
That's a good
And
point.
yeah, I mean, it's not like you're going around jabbing people in the ass with shots to shoot them with steroids. No, you're jabbing your own ass and you're shooting steroids and you're doing it for success and making money with your physique and your body. And that's what the whole point of it is. I disagree when the government wants to get involved in people's personal affairs and tell you can't do something, in your own home and in your own time, and you're not hurting nobody. You're not doing no danger to nobody. You're just doing it to yourself.
Damn good point.
And yeah, at that point, I mean, if drinking and alcohol is legal to do, which I think, in my opinion, alcohol is the starter drug. Now, marijuana, alcohol leads to marijuana and so forth.
Right on.
And yeah, and it's a legal thing to do, which I drink. I like drinking beer, but I drink beer when I'm home alone and when I'm, not driving or have anything to do, and I don't go out. As soon as I start opening up, after I open that first can, you can ask anybody to ask me to drive. I can't go. I didn't open up a beer can, didn't drink it.
Right on.
And I'm probably exaggerating at that point because I probably done drank 6 by the time they contacted me. But I'm just trying to make myself look good here. But you know, but yeah, I mean, if that's legal and smoking's legal, I mean, gotta keep in mind that all this drug war started when the president Nixon declared war on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back and you look at that time, who was it hurting? It wasn't hurting nobody. It was just affecting the people who were using them themselves.
Oh.
Okay? Then all of a sudden, when they declare war on drugs and made it illegal, all of a sudden you have crime go up.
Uh-huh.
Crime. That includes murders because most major murders are drug related.
Right.
There wasn't murders happening over drugs back then because there was no law about it back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're sitting there realizing the people who profit off of this are these big, rich people that have their hands deep soiled into a lot of this, including the CIA.
Exactly.
And which is the reason why the Vietnam War was about, and they lied about the Tonkin incident just to get us involved in Vietnam to get a hold of the opium. And it's like they lied about the Middle East and got us in the Middle East so they can get their poppy fields.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Why would we be guarding opium and poppy fields in a war? Why aren't we burning it?
No.
And and everything was a lie to get us there in the first place. And that lie is what killed a lot of people, not just Americans, people on both sides.
Yep.
Nobody wants some invading country to come in and declare war against them and start killing them.
No. No. And,
Nobody, no country, no people of any country do not wish that at all. And America has a problem when it comes to that. And I'm not speaking on as the Cuban assassin. I'm just speaking some truths here.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we got to be careful who we select as our officials and put them in office, because we have a corrupt government system.
Oh yeah.
And it's not that the system don't want to work for you. It's just that when you got too many corrupt politicians who should be statesmen and not politicians, you know what Donald Trump was. And listen, I'm by no means a pro-Trump either.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you. You know what he was? He was a statesman.
Uh-huh.
You know what a statesman does? He doesn't take the pay. He donates it because he looks at the job as a service and a duty to your country.
Right on.
And Donald Trump did that. And yes, during the 4 years Donald Trump has, did anybody not notice that there was no terrorist attacks? There was all that just ceased to happen. And how that happens because he took the money out of the Paris Accord of the so-called greenhouse and all that, and we're the only country that puts any money in it. And that's how they pay. That's how the terrorists get paid, because we create our own bad guys. We have to create our own boogeyman.
Yep.
At one time, Adolf Hitler and Mussolini had that, and the Emperor of Japan had that title. And as we moved on, they decided to put Saddam Hussein as that person, the very person we helped fight against Iran. Mind you, we helped the coup of takeover from the Shah of Iran. We're the ones that helped them. The People's Empire play now. We're the ones that helped them.
Mm-hmm.
The Islamic extremists. We helped them. Then they wanted to go into Iraq. Then we helped Saddam Hussein. You're starting to see. We helped. Also, the only person that was against us was Osama bin Laden. He was the only person that was against the American influence, because he actually saw us as infidels, that we were coming in and we're messing everything up.
Wow.
And he's right.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to side with the villain, because two wrongs don't make a right. And what murdering people after people got murdered is not the answer.
Right.
So I mean, America, in this, when I say America, I'm not talking about Americans. I'm talking about the American machine.
Right.
The military industrial complex is the real bad guys.
No, I agree 110%.
When
Yep.
when all your money is going to manufacturing weapons,
Mm-hmm.
how many weapons do we need?
Yeah.
And then it goes to also feeding the fuel of the propaganda acts of the politicians who are corrupt, because they're the ones backing them with the money. And then you got a problem when someone actually tries to do something right and tries to be a statesman, and then you see what happens. Listen, Jesse the Body Ventura is a statesman, and he in fact looks at Donald Trump like an Adolf Hitler.
Right.
Okay, and I'll be the first one to tell you. Listen, I hope I hope we don't have another 4 years of Donald Trump. I don't want another 4 years of a Biden. I don't want another 4 years of anybody that's associated with either one of those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need change. We need new young people. I think we need to make laws where they stop career politicians, because I think the people who stay in the politics, the career politicians, are always pushing the same agenda. They just change the context of the words. It's not a new idea. It's an old idea they never got passed, and they're trying to pass the same old idea because
Yep.
they're going to benefit. They're going to benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
We need statesmen in there, people who's going to volunteer, do their duty, and the term limits of career politicians, so we can have fresh young minds, because that's where all the ideas comes from. Fresh young minds. It doesn't take a kindergarten to figure out that there's a big problem in our political system,
I
and
agree.
and it does have to be changed. And but it's not going to be an easy task to change it. It's going to take every American to do that, which is hard to do when you got a political corrupt system that's backed by the military-industrial complex, because that's the military. They get to back them up, and then you got people fighting. You got citizens fighting against the military. It's you know so what's going on in the political world is actual a political civil war
For
is
sure.
going on in the political war, and I agree with Jesse the Body Ventura. There are two big reasons why everything's going on, because we have a system, a two-party system, one that says Democrats, one that says Republicans. It should never be a two-party system. It should just be a one system that's actually with people voting in, actual statesmen, people who's going to do the job and volunteer their time to do it and use their money to help what needs to be, because it should be your duty. I'm not saying they shouldn't make anything. I'm just saying that they can donate some of it to help with the cause of help keeping America good as a country.
For sure. And
You know. Go ahead.
how could we compare that? You've been in wrestling since, you said, what, 89?
Since 1989, I've wrestled in 5 decades, 34 years.
God bless you. So you've seen it all, and you've been around. Your father was in wrestling. You've watched wrestling even before that. What you're saying about politics, and it's the machine, and I agree with everything you say. How can we compare and contrast that to the pro wrestling business? What changes have you
Well,
seen in the past few years?
well, let me tell you. My dad created the character Cuban Assassin in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the assassination of John F. Kennedy was in 1963,
Mm-hmm.
and then a year later, 1969, Bobby Kennedy be assassinated himself.
Right on. Yeah.
Okay, now here's the thing. Wrestling emulates from the reality of the world. So my dad and myself were characters of the Cuban nuclear crisis
Right.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now when I came into play in 1989, it was already had been Vietnam had already came. We already had the Panama invasion that we did with George W.H. Bush. Then all of a sudden we had Desert Storm that already happened, and so when I came in, it was Desert Storm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so had hit years after I came in. But we emulate what we see. I mean, if you look on wrestling, the Iron Sheik, Kozlov had gotten the character and created the character and used it because they had hostages that was held, in Iran,
Right.
and so he became that big villainous villain that everybody needed on the national stage. And of course, you had Nikolai Volkov. There's always been Russians, Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, Boris Zukov. There's always been tensions. Sputnik Monroe, from earlier, from because of Sputnik. There's always been that tension from the political realm of the stage that plays out in the professional wrestling stage.
Right.
And and we've hit every note of area of reality of the world, and we add into it, constantly. I
Yeah.
mean, and you can just look who the people that represents the company. Now, if you want to just go with WWE, since we're just WWE is the company now, let's just go with WWE, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go transcend into it, because the The first guy was George Hackenschmidt. Then he would end up losing the title, and the big star would then be Frank Gotch.
Okay. Yeah.
Frank Gotch winning the world title encouraged a lot of the youth and people to join the local YMCA's, and it opened up YMCA's all across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was wanting to be a wrestler. Okay. Then fast forward to Ed Strangler Lewis and the Goldust Trio with Ed Sandow and Toot Tamon, who create the actual blueprint of a wrestling show based on a vaudeville play. You know, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, which is match 1, match 2, main event.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and create the rules and all that to, you know, for professional wrestling to make it look like a professional sporting event package as well.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward, and television hits, and we have our first televised superstar, Gorgeous George.
Right.
And these are the people who are putting butts in the seats. These are the peaks of wrestling. These are the stars that people were drawn to see. Mind you, when Gorgeous George was the peak, you know, Lou Thesz was the world champion. Lou Thesz followed Gorgeous George, so they had to put Lou Thesz defend his title on before Gorgeous George. You know, so think about that.
Huh,
I mean, that's you know, I mean, he had to because they did it before, and everybody saw Gorgeous George. People got up and left. So, and then fast forward again, and then we have a phenom that was Andre the Giant.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now Andre and Muhammad Ali were the two most wreckable names in sports in the world. Without cable television, they were the megastars of their sports, megastar of boxing and megastar of wrestling, pro boxing and pro wrestling. Which ironically, pro boxing and pro wrestling were part of the carnies and the athletic shows for P.T. Barnum. So he can control a gambling aspect of it, and you know, and see, people don't know their history. They don't realize, you know, boxing and wrestling are really closely related. And then all of a sudden later on, cable come out. Then you have Hulk Hogan, the big comic book superhero, and who did he battle? The Iron Sheik. Okay, that's infamous. That's iconic. You know, and even though, you know, Cosgrove, the Iron Sheik was only world champion for short period of time, but yet he was one of the most recognizable names of pro wrestling, period, because of that, the importance of that. You know, if there was no Iron Sheik, there would be no Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, those people in the garden wouldn't have went nuts if he wasn't beating the Iron Sheik.
That's right. And of course, you know, if there was no Sylvester Stallone, there would have been no Hulk Hogan either.
Right.
Because, you know, Hulk Hogan was struggling, and Stallone cast him as Thunderlips to play the wrestler in the boxer versus wrestler scene in Rocky III. And Sylvester Stallone, probably the best psychologist when it comes to the wrestling business. Matter of fact, his first movie he ever directed was Paradise Alley, which he had his good buddy Terry Funk in it. And a lot of those stars in the 70s were also in that movie. And Stallone took up for the wrestlers. When the stuntmen were laughing at him, he's like, hey, listen, you guys only have to do this every so often. These wrestlers, they do this every day.
Oh, yeah.
And do it for a lot less pay. He told them, so respect the pro wrestlers. I mean, he did that. Stallone did.
Good looks, Stallone.
And, well, man, I thought Vince should have hired Stallone to be his booker, because Stallone understands the true underdog psychology of wrestling.
Right.
That's why you can still watch a Rocky movie, and the fights are still intense.
Yeah.
The psychology never changes for that. And then that's why you can watch older matches, and you still can get suspended in disbelief, and then that match becomes real to you. In today's matches, it's more of entertainment, you know, and hopefully the guy that you like wins, you know. And but then you fast forward again from Hulk Hogan, and mind you, Vince McMahon's demographics, when he took over WWF from his dad and bought it, was to market it to children, because the first thing they did with Hulk Hogan right away, I mean, if you watch early when Hulk Hogan come in, it would look like a professional sport.
Right.
But after his first year, you started noticing things were being different in WWF. They were now creating T-shirts. They had ice cream bars. They were selling, you know, toys, wrestling dolls,
Tuesday night
lunch
Titans.
boxes. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they had all these aspects where they were selling to the demographic of the young children.
Mm-hmm.
Because the kids, mom, dad, I want that, mom, dad. Okay, that's what happens. Mom and dad wants to make their kid happy,
Right.
and and then as the years go by, that kid grows up, and all of a sudden you have Stone Cold Steve Austin, the kid working his first job at McDonald's or Burger King or Pizza Hut or somewhere, and he's frustrated with his boss because his boss is, being a little harsh on him because they're trying to keep their quotas on their times and making the food and getting to the customer, and well, they want to beat their boss up, and they got to live through it vicariously through Stone Cold Steve Austin
Yep.
on WWE, right?
Uh-huh.
The Attitude Era, right?
Uh-huh.
Because every kid grows up and gets an attitude, right?
Yeah. And that was my teenage
And
years, so it's the perfect time
hmm
for me. Yep.
and that's my 20s.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden those kids grow up and they start getting married and they start having kids of their own. Last they want a middle fingering guy and a bunch of guys saying "suck it" and point to their crotch. So they go to a different person. Hustle, loyalty, respect. You can't see me, John Cena.
Uh-huh.
And they even put John Cena looking like the average guy that sits in the audience
Mm-hmm.
to bring them down from that image of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then years go on, they're trying to press, which is not his fault. Roman Reigns is one of the best, greatest wrestlers, and he's proven it today.
Yep.
It was just the wrong timing of how they were trying to shove him down people's throats,
Yep.
and people wanted to cater to the actual complete underdog, and out was Daniel Bryan.
Yep.
Okay? Hotter than white hot. But
Mm-hmm.
Vince can't stand to be wrong
Yep.
because he thought everybody should accept what he was shoving down the steak, the beef and the steak that he was shoving down their throats. But people were tired of eating steak for all these years. They ate steak since Hogan.
Right.
Now they wanted something different. They want their meats. They want their potatoes and their other vegetables now. So you got a Daniel Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and still while Vince is still trying to press Roman Reigns down. I can see that meeting every time too, man. I can see, everybody sitting there going at the meeting. Well, I think Daniel Bryan should have pushed. Yeah, yeah. And the Vince says, yeah, it's a good idea. It's over, but I got a better idea. How about Roman Reigns?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. He's hot. He's masculine. Yeah, he'll sell. So that's not Roman Reigns' fault.
Nope.
Vince was getting off on him. That's Vince. And
Agreed.
then Daniel Bryan gets injured, and he's like, oh yeah, we got a replacement for Daniel Bryan. How about Roman Reigns? And then what happened? Since Vince wasn't going to give him a guy to represent the people, so they went to a woman who was calling herself the Man, Becky Lynch, and then first time ever, a woman become face of the company.
Yep.
You see?
Uh-huh.
And, now Vince didn't hate that because he likes women too.
Exactly.
You
Yep.
know. So I mean, that worked in the positive for him. I just felt bad for Daniel Bryan because every time the fans were trying to push him, Vince
Mm-hmm.
was pushing Roman, which again, it's not Roman Reigns' fault. This is not his fault.
I agree.
You know, and if it was me, and I seen the fans boo Roman Reigns when he won the Royal Rumble, and they cheered Daniel Bryan, I was like, to me, I already got it made. That's when I would have Roman Reigns just be heel automatically from that moment on.
Right.
And since they're accepting it as a heel, let him be a heel. And then now after all this time, it's Roman Reigns.
Yep.
And why? Because he became a heel,
Uh-huh.
and he uses his family and his family heritage, which are the largest wrestling family in history, and they date back, and they go back way back, High Chief Peter Maivia, right?
Right.
Soul Man Rocky Johnson,
Uh-huh.
and of course the family produced the biggest star of wrestling of all time, which is the Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Right. And now they're telling the best story they ever told.
Using their family, which
Yep.
was the idea, which should have been done with making Roman Reigns the heel in the first place.
Yep.
Because his cousins, the Usos, were already over from day one.
Yep.
Not to not to try to plug them, but from day one they were over from day one because the fans always loved the Usos,
Mm-hmm.
and the Usos are the greatest tag team in wrestling history, no
Yeah.
doubt, no doubt. I mean, that doesn't say nothing bad about the Road Warriors or anybody else. The Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, best feud in tag team wrestling is Rock and Roll and Midnight, and they were actually invented for each other.
Oh yeah.
So it was always a plan for the Midnight Express with the Rock and Roll Express, always.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
yeah, but I see them emulate every now and then now with the news media. They tried it with that one kid, Hassan,
Yeah.
and then got backlash,
Yeah. It didn't
because the
work.
terrorists were literally, killing Americans by cutting their heads off,
Yeah.
and that kind of touched a nerve with the American people. So Vince had to let him go and cut it, end it real quick, kill that
Yeah.
angle, which is, if it was done in the '70s, it would have been different.
For sure.
But you didn't have any hostage getting their head cut off either.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the terrorists then were trying to use political means and against America. But then again, why did the Iranians take Americans as hostages? Because America helped them get the coup over the Shah, and then the Americans automatically started financing Iraq to prepare to protect Iraq.
Right on. Yep.
Because why they want to protect Iraq? Because Iraq had a majority of Americans' oil
Yep.
owned by Halliburton. I mean, I mean, you can see I'm a little bit of a historian because I do research for a lot of different things, especially for my acting in the films. I try to find something historical and stuff. Even for my writing of my own movies, I do the same thing.
I
Um,
did want to touch on that as well. God bless you, because most people come on here to tell their story and to put themselves over, which that's what the show's for. You came on here and you're putting over pro wrestling. You're giving people pro wrestling knowledge, letting them know why it's great. So thank you for that. But I did want to touch on what got you into films. Let the folks know about your filmmaking, some of the films you've made, starred in. What can you tell the folks at
sure.
home about that?
Well, my first brush with anything acting was when I went to church as a kid,
Okay.
and I had to thank my mother. You know, my mother is the one that taught me how to memorize things.
Mm.
Okay, it was my mom, starting from a church play with these
Mm-hmm.
little one or two lines of us, which she taught me how to, and I used that memorization skill to help me in school.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was failing my school grades and like English literature and all that, and then I started just doing memorization skills. I didn't even have to really read anything. I just would skim through it, and I would pick key words and key things. So that way, if it was a multiple choice question, I couldn't get it every single time. Because even with trying to know how hard it is, you take a test and they want you to know the definition of a word,
Right.
and they give you, they're giving you 25 to 50 words on the test to memorize the definition, to know the definition. I would just get key I would just brush through the dictionary, get key words to memorize with that, so that way when it came, we have a brief sentence of the definition on the test, I automatically knew what it was. Boom,
Okay.
passed. Yeah, and you know, and and I'm probably guilty of some other things in school. I remember one time I took advantage of a teacher who can hardly see, and I did the Charlie. One time I had to do my homework, and I had to turn it. I forgot. I totally
Yeah.
forgot, and I just did the Charlie Brown writing real quick. Turn it in because I knew she couldn't see. She gave me a D. She gave me a D,
Well,
D
better than
minus,
better than
and
nothing.
yeah, but I literally wrote nothing. It was all Charlie Brown writing, just
Yeah.
and then she brought the paper and had it circled to me. She goes, "This is not how you spell were. It's Wherre." And all she did was circle the little scribble of Charlie Brown writing. I love that woman, Miss Riston. I miss her. I hate the fact I did that to her. I feel like it was bad of me to do that to her. And one guy in the classroom, he's like, Miss Riston. She said, yes. He goes, how can I stay for that? pages are missing out of my book. And she goes, what do you mean missing? He showed her. He ripped the pages out of the book. So he wouldn't, so, she didn't have any more books. And they were old books. And now, when they got the new books and they had plenty of extras, he couldn't do that no more. So, but yeah, some little notes there. I don't want to encourage no one to do that. Please don't take advantage of your teacher. That woman was a sweet lady and didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
That was a one-time thing for me, and I just, I had to turn something in, and I was like, I'd rather turn something in and get an F because I totally forgot.
Yeah. That was my psychology in school. Anything's better than a 0. Even if it's 10%,
Exactly.
it's hard to get that 0 worked up.
That's right. That's right. That's what I was looking at. Yeah. She gave me a D-, so I passed.
Hell yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'll take it. My fault for not studying.
Yep.
That's how I looked at it. But listen, I made sure I turned my homework in after that, and I also made sure I studied after that too, because I wasn't about to be put in that position again.
Right.
And but as that's my first taste of acting was there at church. We went to Sunday school and all that, and had these Sunday plays, Easter plays, and all that. My mom's one taught me that memorization. Of course, being the son of the Cuban assassin as a character, growing up, I was always the bad guy or the monster playing with the kids. It's never the good guy, never the hero.
Right.
Always the bad guy. And then, and I didn't mind, I didn't mind it at all. I was getting attention and having fun with my friends.
Right.
My friends always told me, you're the best monster and the best bad guy that anybody can ever play with. And, so I kind of took it to heart. Like, hey, yeah, I don't mind being the bad guy. At least I get to play in every single game. At least I get to have all this attention from the friends,
Exactly.
And so, I took it and looked at it as a positive instead of a negative. And then years later, in 1999, when I was part of the 1999 Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling Legends Tour for Emile Dupree, and I got the chance of a lifetime to team up with my dad to be his tag team partner. Mind you, my dad retired in 1993, and then he came out of retirement to tag with me.
Okay.
To reform the Cuban Assassins. Because after the Cuban Assassins was Frank Silverstein, and which was kayfabe then, so we always legitimately thought Frank was our uncle.
Oh, okay.
Because my actual uncle, Papa, was supposed to be the Cuban assassin, but his wife, my Aunt Lucy, told him if he left Puerto Rico, then she was going to divorce him, so he didn't leave. He stayed in Puerto Rico, so Dad had to get somebody else, which was, the Black Panther that became Cuban assassin, and later on Frank Silverstein.
Okay.
And then, but during the time I got in, Dad was tag teaming with Jerry Morrow, and they were called the Cuban Commandos. And then I would use that name, the Cuban Commando, when I left that, in '89 to go my own way. And I was wanting to portray a black brunette style Nature Boy Ric Flair, but call myself the Ace, Richie Acevedo. And the promoter looked at me and he said, we already got one Nature Boy Ric Flair and you're not him, so you're going to have to do something different, kid. And I suggest you stick to your dad's gimmick because you look just like him.
Okay.
And so, yes, I wanted to present something different, so I did the clean military cut looking person and called myself the Cuban Commando instead of assassin. And then I would become Cuban Assassin number 2 when I teamed with my dad, which was a dream come true. I learned a lot, and stuff. But during that time, Rene Dupree, some director, was doing a French TV children's series up there called Lunatics. And he saw Rene walking down, and he had to have Rene, but he didn't really know Rene was Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, Emile Dupree's son. And this director, grew up watching Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling when he was a kid. So he had to have Rene. So he signed Rene up, and then he asked Rene, because something happened with the stunt coordinator or something. He needed someone else to fill in. So he asked Rene. Rene said, well, I can get Cuban's son, Richie. And he's like, yeah, can you do that? And he said, yeah. And Rene told me about it. So I showed up at the Cocan Arena. And the guy came over, shook my hand, told me how much big fans he was, took me to the people there that had me fill out this form of papers and all in French, and they paid me in cash.
Okay.
Yeah, like $125 in Canadian cash.
Hell.
Might be a little bit more, but and then I had to film from 5 that morning all the way until 5 the evening,
Phew.
and involved Renee and and stuff. So it was the first time I was introduced to anything like that and how it works and all that. So it was pretty interesting.
Mhm.
So I decided, then after that night we get cleaned up and eat and come back to the same arena, and I have to wrestle Renee in a 30-minute Broadway match.
Oh.
I done wrestled him in different takes and
Mhm.
all day. Now I got to do a 30-minute time limit draw.
Yeah,
Oh
whole
my
different
gosh,
ball
come
game.
on. Yeah, and Renee and I are both tired. We're both and had a killer match too, being
Good.
tired. And but that's where my introduction came to it, and I fought against it. People, because I mean, they had people make offers to me, a lot of indie film stuff too.
Mhm.
And I kept saying, no, no, I'm a pro wrestler, not an actor. But pro wrestling is acting,
Yep.
and which I wouldn't come to that conclusion until after I stopped being gung ho pro wrestler. And so years later, around 20, the year 2013, my dad came in to visit, and I was in the slumps then, and I was embarrassed to let my dad see how I was living.
Mhm.
So, had him stay. My sister and her husband had him stay in a motel. They paid for it. We had another one. My in-laws, we pick him up in her van, drive him around so he can sightsee some old sites and everything. I stayed with him a couple nights at the motel room too. He got to meet my kids, but they were young then, and he got to meet my nephew, who was young then too, my sister's kid. It's the only time he ever got to meet him in his life. And but during that time, Brian Logan, you might have heard of him,
Uh-huh.
the player Brian Logan, one of my biggest rivalries in West Virginia wrestling history, or my career for that matter.
Uh-huh.
Um, Contacted me and he says, "Hey man, I got my own production company, Five Crows. I think it's called something Five Crows Production, something like that." Or I said, "Okay,
Five crows.
congratulations." And then he's like, "My first movie is going to be me about me." I said, "Well, of course it is.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's a documentary and called Worker, the movie from his book Worker. The uh, last of a dying breed or something like that.
Okay.
He wrote about me in his book, and then he wanted me to be part of his documentary. Okay, no problem. So he had me be part of his documentary, and I did it for him. And then about I say 6 months later, I get a phone call from my friend Kurgan, which you know him as the Oddities, John Kurgan,
Okay.
Robert May, and he and I became friends from the 99 Legends tour. And he had been acting since then. Since
Huh.
he started his acting, started off with 300, and
Yep.
he and he and he told me how he got the break and stuff. So I should do it, and I said I don't know. I have to look into it. So I decided to look into acting. Took online video acting lessons. And I realized this is the same thing as pro wrestling. So I started submitting of 2014, and then I got in a couple auditions and stuff, and then I went to film this one movie called Bounty Hunter War, but it's never come to fruition yet.
Okay.
And then I went and filmed another movie called Milfs versus Zombies with Brad Twig, um, and uh, Brad Twig and I were working together on some of his other films. He'd bring me in, but and that was a couple indie films, like Fiendish Fables and Frames of Fear. And Frames of Fear is what he had his idea for Wrestle Massacre.
Okay.
Then I would get on board doing some big projects like making The Mob New York season one, and I got to be on background for Concussion with Will Smith. And then I would, yeah, and at that time on Concussion, it was exactly 1 year from the date when I took my acting lessons. And
Mm.
I'm like, how in the world I end up here
Hell
on
yeah.
this big production set with Will Smith?
Mhm.
And So, and then I got on to Outsiders and WGN, and did the last episode, 13, season one, which was directed by RoboCop himself, Peter Weller.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and yeah, I got to meet Peter Weller, one of my idols. This is like, uh, I
He,
wanted to say, I wanted to say his lines to him, but I didn't. I just said, "Thanks for having me." Shook his hand and goes, "Thanks for coming."
you're right.
I was wanting to say, I was wanting to turn around and say, "Dead or alive, you're coming with me." and
Oh yeah, big fan of
then,
those movies.
yeah, and then they asked me to come back as feature background for season two. So I got a lot of screen time with some of the big name talents of the series, and
Nice.
became friends with a lot of them. And and that's what kind of got me more attention and more other places. Even though I was kind of being stereotyped, and I got to the ID channels and other stuff doing shows, and it got me a lot of work, man. Just for Outsiders alone, I can't thank them enough.
Hell
And
yeah.
then Brad Twigg
Mm-hmm.
had wanted to do the Wrestle Massacre movie, and so I went and did it, and then they put me on the cover of their DVD, and lo and behold, I got all this attention from Wrestle Massacre. So I owe Brad Twigg and I owe Chelsea Peterson for casting me in Outsiders, because that really got me a lot of attention and got me a lot of work, both those.
I'm
Then I
sure.
decided, when I started seeing how to make your own movies, so I
Mm-hmm.
started writing and making my own, which was The Mountaineer, and you can see that for free on Tubi TV.
Okay.
Same as you can also see Wrestle Massacre for free on Tubi TV.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing my own thing. I got Boxer versus Wrestler. I'm trying to get it distributed out. I'm working on that still. Um, and but I sell them at shows and stuff too when I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the process right now, post production with Legends Mountain, the third movie I've actually written and directed and starred in. And I've been in quite a few things. I just did Was Once a Hero Western that's got Robert Carradine and John Carter Cash, which is Johnny Cash's son,
Nice.
and I play his younger brother in the movie. And
Okay.
and then I'm getting ready to go do another horror film up in Rochester, New York. A guy's a fan of Wrestle Massacre, so I'm playing a character called Sergeant Massacre, kind
Oh,
of like
okay.
Sergeant Slaughter. You know, and that's just kind of funny. I kind of stole Sergeant Slaughter and Ivan Koloff's voice tone when I do the character, the Cuban voice, when I say "Shut your stinking mouth," and that's that's a combination of Ivan Koloff, you know, cause I'm Nikita, and Sergeant Slaughter, attention. So I kind of stole that from them because I actually like Sergeant Slaughter, and I actually like the Russian Bear Ivan Koloff. When I got to meet Ivan Koloff, oh man, you just don't know. It was such an honor to meet him and to hear him in his real voice and the soft toned voice of a man.
Mm.
It's like, and I told him I stole his voice, and he says, "You're welcome." I said, I kind of stole your voice from my Cuban character. He goes, "You're welcome." And then we kind of outside. He had his match. I had already had mine, and I was sitting there, and like we're trying to do a pull apart on him, and I'm sitting there. He puts his arm around me, and he starts doing that deep voice, and I start doing mine. Yeah, yeah, just like the kid, like Ivan Koloff said. He said, "You sticking Americanas," and he's like, and we're playing off each other. And then he told me back, "I did that just for you." You know.
Hell yeah. And I'm sure it
Yeah,
meant
I
a
was
lot
like,
to you.
"Oh, it did. It did." I mean, that's like, man, it's one of the guys I idolized.
Mm-hmm.
Former WWF World Champion, former NWA World Tag Team Champion, former Mid Atlantic Heavyweight Champion. I mean, yeah, I thought the guy was one. Me growing up, he was one of the people I loved to watch.
Right.
You know, to me, the only thing interesting about Paul Jones's army was Paul Jones and Ivan Koloff. Didn't matter who anybody else was. Yeah, Paul Jones and Ivan Koloff.
Okay.
And I think these guys had a heated feud together, and now Paul Jones is Ivan Koloff's manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was cool. I was like, man, Paul Jones and Ivan Koloff,
No doubt. Yeah.
and and but yeah, and that I've been in a lot of big things. I've been feature background Creed 2. Worked on White Boy Rick. scenes didn't get to make the cut. I got to work on Superfly. The close-up scenes didn't make the cut, but all my far background stuff did.
Okay.
At the point myself, I did some background work for Shazam: Fury of the Gods, which Shazam is
Damn.
Captain, which his name's Captain Marvel. Just so you know,
Right. Yeah.
the magic word that he transformed Billy Batson into Captain Marvel is the word Shazam, which stands for Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the might of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the speed of the warrior cunning of the Achilles, and the speed of Mercury.
There you
That's
go.
for each letter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his name's Captain Marvel, but my two favorite superheroes is Batman
Mm-hmm.
and Captain Marvel.
I love my Batman.
Which is Shazam. Yeah, Batman's the greatest.
Oh yeah. See, you guys even got some comic book knowledge in this episode. We went
Well-
over our time, but you're a legend. It's episode 100. We're doing things differently today. But in the final 10 minutes, I give everybody Cuban Assassin whatever you want to sell, as far as merch if you want to, upcoming shows, any words of wisdom for up-and-coming wrestlers, or just fans in general watching the show. But a lot of wrestlers watch the show as well. But anything you want to put out in the ether, the final 10 minutes is all yours. Whatever you want to put out there, have at it, my man.
Well, I got a YouTube channel people can follow. Just search for actual lowercase letters, two words together, called Cuban Mano. That's CUBANMANO, Cuban Mano, and the actual number 2, Cuban Mano 2. You can subscribe and follow me there. I got several Facebook pages, but I would recommend everybody go to my public page, Richie Acevedo Actor, and follow me there. I am on Instagram at Richie _ Acevedo. You can follow me on Twitter as Cuban _ Assassin, the actual number 2. If you want to get any merchandise and everything, just contact me at mountainmanproductions@outlook.com. That's mountainmanproductions@outlook.com. That's capital N for mountain, capital M for man, and capital P for productions, and all the rest is lowercase letters. And whenever you see a poster or something, you can see me. I sell my movies, the DVDs, at some of my movies at the table, along with pictures and stuff. And you can have your picture taken with me for free. I don't charge for that. And anybody can hit me up on any of those social media sites. And I think anybody wants to get into pro wrestling, try to find themselves a wrestling school. Start there.
Yeah.
I know that you have to pay money, but start there. That's a good start to start in pro wrestling. I think that people should understand it's a sacrifice to be a pro wrestler. You're going to sacrifice a lot, and you need to understand that. That's how the pro wrestling business is. It's still one business that you start literally from nothing.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody, if they have any suicidal thoughts, please contact the Suicide Helpline Prevention. Call them up. They will help you. If you have any problems mental-wise or anything, please get help. You can even start from the suicide hotline, and they'll find the help for you.
For sure.
Mental illness is no game. It's something to be taken seriously. And when you get to the point of suicide, it's a very serious thing. And that's all I like to say. Say God bless you all, love you all, and hopefully you guys come out and say hi to me.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. It's been an honor. It truly has. I hope to have you back in the future, Cuban.
Sure will.
All the years and all the knowledge you have, we could give you a series, so that's something to think about.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, I thank you. If you don't mind to hang on the line with me, to the fans, you know how we do. It's been 100 episodes, and we're talking to the Cuban Assassin. I couldn't do it without y'all. You know I love you. Thank you so much for the support. You know how we do. Go out there and treat each other kindly and fairly. And go out there and live your dreams. You might be sitting in your room 100 episodes deep talking to a wrestling legend, actor, and a real-life hero. Take care of yourself. If you're not feeling good, holler at me, man. Holler at me. I got time. I'll talk to you. We love you. We got more to come. See you next time.